Okay. Okay, we are here for our first meeting of 2024. It's great to see a full house here at Manhattan office. Hope everybody had great holidays, and we're back to business with some new financings and a full agenda. So let's get going. Tab 1 is our minutes from our December 6th board meeting. Anyone have any questions, concerns? If not, could we get a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Okay, Beryl and Robert, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Approved. Going on to Finance Committee report. Jerry, would you?
Madam Chair, we met a few minutes ago. We proceeded to review floor financing. It was the pit sales tax, interagency council, the New York Institute of Technology, and the Orange Ulster BOCES offering. We had some discussion, but we recommend that all of those, we unanimously recommend that all of those offerings be approved at today's board meeting. And unless anyone has any questions or any concerns, Madam Chair, that'll conclude my report.
Great.
We also adopted the meeting minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you and thank you. Any discussion needed? Anyone? Okay, so we will move on to our first financing for the Charlton School, which we discussed last month. I believe that is Dave to present, and with Melissa from Barclay Damon and Joe Reed from the Office of Joe Reed, Co-Bond Counsel. Turn it over to you guys.
Thanks very much. The members will recall the resolution to proceed for this financing was adopted back at the board meeting on November 8th of last year. Since that time, just a few updates. PACB approval was received on November 15th. The seeker determination was completed on January 8th, and the TEFRA hearing is expected to be completed this month. Other than that, the transaction is as described to the board back in November. So at this point, unless there's any questions, I will turn it over to Melissa and Joe to discuss the bond documents.
Great. Thanks, Dave, and good morning to the DASNY board members and staff. As further detailed in our letter to the board, before you for consideration is a proposed series resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $12 million of bonds under DASNY's Residential Institutions for Children Revenue Bond Resolution, which was adopted in 2008, and which authorizes DASNY to issue bonds from time to time to finance loans to certain not-for-profit entities that operate residential institutions for children. DASNY will loan the proceeds of these bonds to the Charlton School in order to finance or refinance costs of the demolition of existing dormitories and construction of new residential facilities. The series resolution delegates to authorized officers of DASNY the power, among others, to determine the final terms of the bonds, subject to certain limitations described in our letter, and authorizes the entry into a loan agreement and other customary transaction documents.
Morning. Thank you, Melissa. The bonds will be special obligations of DASNY payable solely from the revenues pledged to the bonds, which are primarily payments made by the Charlton School under its loan agreement. The loan agreement will constitute a general obligation of the Charlton School, although the source of repayment is expected to be capital financing add-on rate that OCFS will assess against school districts and social services districts placing children with the Charlton School in an amount sufficient to pay debt service on the bonds. As required by the Act, the Charlton School will also enter into an account control agreement that establishes a lockbox where all monies received by the Charlton School from such school districts and social services districts for the provision of residential services will be held on a monthly basis until such time as there is sufficient money to make the next month's debt service payment under the loan agreement, and then the remaining money for the month will be released to the Charlton School.
Additionally, payment on the bonds is supported by the statutory intercept process by which the controller will withhold state reimbursement to a school district or a social services district that fails to make a required payment to the Charlton School. The loan will also be secured by a mortgage in accordance with the act. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Anything? All right. Could we get a motion to adopt the documents as presented?
So moved.
Al, thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Who said that? Joan? Was that Joan?
Yep.
Okay, let's give the TV a chance to second. Okay, thank you, Joan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on. Oh,
Melissa and Joseph, first of all, it's good to see you both. Thank you for being here today. It's Al Carney, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Al. Good to see you.
Thank you, Ellen. Pleasure to be here.
moving on to tab 4 for Cornell, which we also discussed at the end of the year. I believe that will be Dave again with Damon Pace of Oric Harrington and Natalia Pearson Farrar of Golden Holly James presenting. And I believe we also have a revised opinion of council letter on this one. What you had in your package. Okay, take it away.
Thank you. The resolution to proceed for this financing was adopted back at the December 6th meeting. Since that time, the TEFRA hearing was held on December 27th. PACB approval was received on January 5th, and the seeker determination was completed on January 8th. The board is now being asked to adopt the necessary documents, and I will turn it over to Damon and Natalia to give an overview of the documents.
Thank you, David, and good morning, Chairman Gomez, Vice President Williams, DASNY board members, and senior staff. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. And apologies, apparently my camera is not working on my laptop, so it's just audio today. As detailed in our letter to the board provided last week, as well as the revised letter provided earlier this week, which provided one clarification, before you for consideration is the adoption of two series resolutions relating to Cornell University, the Series 2024A resolution and the Series 2024B resolution. The proposed Series 2024 bonds would be issued pursuant to DASNY's Cornell University Revenue Bond Resolution, which the board adopted back on January 26, 2000, and which was last supplemented and amended on March 6, 2019. The related loan agreement was amended and restated as of April 25th, 2019. And the amended and supplemented documents were each effective as of May 12, 2020. The Series 2024 bonds are to be issued at one or more times to refund all or a portion of DASNY's Cornell University revenue bonds, Series 2000A, Series 2000B, Series 2004A, Series 2004B, Series 2019B, and Series 2019C. Second purpose would be to finance and or refinance the cost of renovations, improvements, and or additions to the university's Ithaca campus, Cornell Tech campus on Roosevelt Island, and or the Weill Cornell Medical College in New York City. Purposes also include funding capitalized interest if necessary, and paying all or a portion of the cost of issuance of the Series 2024 bonds. The revised letter, by the way, clarified that the final maturity of the Series 2024 bonds would be no later than 35 years from the July 1 next succeeding the date of issuance of the Series 2024 bonds. Natalia?
Good morning, and thank you for having us. I'm going to briefly touch on three things here. The general resolution, the Series 2024 resolutions, and the Series 2022 resolutions. So the general resolution, as amended and supplemented, constitutes the basic agreement between DASNY and the holders of bonds issued thereunder. The general resolution authorized the issuance from time to time of multiple series of bonds in an unlimited principal amount for purposes including 1, financing or refinancing the cost of projects for the university, 2, paying the associated cost of issuance, and 3, paying or providing for the payment of outstanding notes or bonds issued for the benefit of the university. Each series of bonds is secured on a parity with each other series of bonds by certain revenues, by certain funds and accounts established for the bonds, and by any other security pledged to the payment of the series of bonds. The revenues consist of certain payments to be made by the university under the loan agreement as amended and supplemented on account of debt service on the bonds issued under the general resolution. The Series 2024 resolutions. We are now requesting that the board adopt 2 series resolutions under the general resolution. Each Series 2024 resolution, individually and in the aggregate, authorizes the issuance of bonds entitled to the benefit, protection, and security of the general resolution in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $800 million. The Series 2024 bonds are proposed to be issued to refund certain bonds and to finance or refinance various projects, as Damon described. The Series 2024 bonds are expected to be issued as publicly offered fixed-rate bonds sold through a negotiated sale to a syndicate of underwriters represented by B of A Securities, Inc. However, the Series 2024 resolutions do not limit the discretion of the authority's officers to determine to issue the Series 2024 bonds in other configurations than as are currently contemplated. Additionally, the Series 2024 resolutions delegate to any DASNY authorized officer the powers more particularly described in our letter to the board, including to determine the final terms of the Series 2024 bonds and to execute and deliver various documents, which includes a bond purchase agreement containing the terms and conditions that are customary in connection with the sale of DASNY bonds and a supplement to the loan agreement. The Series 2022 resolutions. At DASNY's April 2022 meeting, the members adopted 3 Series 2022 resolutions that authorize the issuance of bonds under the general resolution and an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $150 million to refund all or a portion of the authority's Cornell University revenue bonds, Series 2000A, Series 2000B, and Series 2019C. Now, no bonds were ever issued under the Series 2022 resolutions, and the refunding authorized by the Series 2022 resolutions constitutes a portion of the plan of finance authorized by the Series 2024 resolutions. Therefore, the Series 2024 resolutions also rescind the Series 2022 resolutions. So this concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you have or discuss further. And thank you for having us.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
No, no, no. Joan, questions? No? Okay.
No
All right.
questions.
Janice, you okay?
Yep.
All right, can we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Al, thank you, Robert. All in favor of the Cornell transaction as presented by the team?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, motion unanimously carries. Thank you, team. Okey doke. We are moving on to the previously discussed pit tax and or sales revenue bond program. I believe that will be presented by Matt and Seth Bryant today. Is that, oh, and Chris Reitzel. So take it away, Team Pitt.
Thank you. The board is being asked to authorize the issuance of multiple series of tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds issued at one or more times in an amount not to exceed $3.5 billion. The state would like the flexibility to issue the proposed bonds under either the personal income tax revenue bond program and or the sales tax revenue bond program. The authorization is for new money and refunding purposes, and with regard to the new money portion, the proceeds of the bonds may be used for any authorized purpose. However, the programs or projects expected to be financed by the bonds are summarized in the staff report. In addition to the new money portion, the authorization also looks to cover the refunding of certain bonds issued under various state-supported debt programs. I want to touch on the debt service coverage ratio and the ratings. And for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024, the debt service coverage ratio in all outstanding state personal income tax bonds is projected to be 7.5 times total debt service, and the debt service coverage on all outstanding sales tax bonds is projected to be 8.1 times total debt service. And finally, the expected ratings under either program are AA1, AA+, and AA+. And now I would like to hand the presentation over to our co-bond counsels.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. Belated Happy New Year. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. Before you for consideration is the adoption of two supplemental resolutions, one under the Personal Income Tax Revenue Bond Program, and the other, the State Sales Tax Revenue Bond Program. Each supplemental resolution authorizes individually and together the issuance of up to $3.5 billion of authorized bonds, meaning that in no event will more than $3.5 billion of bonds be issued under the supplemental resolutions before you today. In order to provide maximum flexibility, as Matt noted, it is proposed that the board authorize issuance of bonds under both the general purpose PIT bond resolution and the sales tax bond resolution. As described in our letter, the authorized bonds may be issued for any authorized purpose and are expected to pay for the projects and programs described earlier and to potentially refund certain outstanding state-supported bonds. Each supplemental resolution permits authorized bonds to be issued in one or more series at one or more times and to be sold on a negotiated basis or through competitive bidding. In addition, all or a portion of the authorized bonds may be issued as tax-exempt bonds and/or federally taxable bonds. Each supplemental resolution provides for an authorized officer of the authority to execute and deliver supplements to the related financing agreement to reflect any additional issuance under that program. And finally, each supplemental resolution delegates to various officers the power to make the determinations described in our letter and to do all things necessary or convenient in connection with the sale and issuance of the authorized bonds. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our co-bond counsel teammate, Seth, talk about the programs a little bit further.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Carney, and members of the DASNY board, and good morning to the officers and staff of the authority. As Chris mentioned, I'll describe the PIT program and the sales tax program. Article 5C of the state finance law authorizes the authority and certain other authorized issuers to issue PIT bonds for any authorized purpose. All PIT bonds issued under the general purpose PIT bond resolution are special obligations of the authority, secured by payments to be received by the authority under the PIT financing agreement with the Division of Budget. The PIT financing agreement obligates the state to pay debt service on outstanding PIT bonds, notes, and other obligations. Those payments are made from amounts available in the Revenue Bond Tax Fund established by the state finance law and are subject to annual appropriation. The Revenue Bond Tax Fund receives statutorily allocated portions of the state's personal income tax receipts, employer compensation expense program receipts, and pass-through entity tax receipts. In terms of the sales tax program, Article 5F of the New York State Finance Law authorizes the authority and certain other authorized issuers to issue sales tax bonds for any purpose, any of the purposes for which state-supported debt may or has been issued. All sales tax bonds issued under the sales tax bond resolution are special obligations of the authority, secured by payments received by the authority under the sales tax financing agreement with the Division of Budget. The sales tax financing agreement obligates the state to pay debt service on all outstanding sales tax bonds issued under the sales tax bond resolution. Those payments are made from amounts available in the Sales Tax Revenue Bond Tax Fund established by state finance law and subject to appropriation. The Sales Tax Revenue Bond Tax Fund is a statutorily allocated percentage of the revenues collected from the state's sales and compensating use taxes. This concludes our presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from members? Very nice and thorough presentation. So may we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Daryl, for second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Fantastic.
Chris, Seth, it's good to see you both. It's Al Carney.
Likewise, thanks, Al.
Great to be here. A real pleasure to see everyone, and especially you, Mr. Carney.
Yeah,
It's a little scruffy beard.
I was noticing that he got the Movember.
You got the memo, right?
Right. Okay, sorry, we were having a sidebar about beards earlier. Tab 6, resolution to proceed on the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities Agencies, or IAC, presented by Alex Sardine of DASNY.
Thank you and good morning again, everybody. The board has been asked to authorize a resolution to proceed with the financing of one or more series of tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds with a maturity not to exceed 30 years in an amount not to exceed $5.5 million on behalf of the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities. This will be a pooled financing on behalf of 3 participants with 7 projects, 6 of which currently have a prior property approval or a PPA. The final PPA is expected to be in place before pricing in March. Proceeds from the Series 2024 bonds are expected to be used to refinance existing bank loans and to reimburse certain institutions for cash expenditures that were used to renovate or acquire certain properties used to provide services for the developmentally disabled. We anticipate a rating of W2 from Moody's, and the full details of this transaction were provided to the members a few moments ago at the Finance Committee. Madam Chair.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, may we have a motion to approve? Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Robert. I think that was Janice. Was that Janice?
It was.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, may we have a vote, please? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Alex. Moving on to the resolution for the venerable New York Institute of Technology, tab 7. Dave Ostrander will present here as well.
Thank you. The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for a financing on behalf of New York Institute of Technology, the details of which were just described to the members of the Finance Committee. Staff is now asking the board for authorization to proceed with the issuance of one or more series of tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds with maturities not to exceed 35 years and the amount not to exceed $105 million. Bond proceeds will finance the costs associated with various construction and renovation projects located on NYIT's Long Island and Manhattan campuses. It's anticipated that we will bring this financing back to the February board meeting to adopt the financing. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Any questions?
I had one. I thought it was worth noting that the Institute of Technology had some significant asset growth that I think is not customarily seen in many institutions, that I think supports a lot of their underlying ratios. David, if you could just add a little bit of color on that for the record, I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and it's a great point, and I think especially during the time period that their assets grew was, during COVID, where enrollment, like most institutions, declined a little bit. And I think that just goes back to management's ability to adjust their expenses based on enrollment levels. They have a very experienced management team at NYIT, and I think they did a great job not only managing expenses, but also growing assets, paying off their debt to the point where they have no long-term debt. So I think, yeah, it's sort of an anomaly when you look at other higher ed institutions during that period, and I think it just goes back to credit to NYIT's management.
True.
Thank you, David.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Be my pleasure.
Thank you. As our resident NYIT graduate is, we are honored to have him move this. May I have a second?
Second.
Second from Al, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, was that one abstention? Or one opposed? Did I see anything go up on the screen? No? It's just readjusting. Oh, okay, all right. No, all in favor, any opposed, no abstentions, motion carries. Okay, tab 8 is the Orange Ulster BOCES program. Presented by Steve Cozier, from DASNY.
Thank you. Good morning, all. The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for bond financings on behalf of the Orange Ulster BOCES, the details of which were just described to the members of the meeting of the Finance Committee. Staff is asking the board for authorization to proceed with the issuance of one or more series of tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds with maturities not to exceed 31 years, sold at one or more times in an aggregate amount not to exceed $158,825,054. Currently, the borrower anticipates bifurcating the financing into 2 issuances based on the expected timing of various SED approvals. It is anticipated that staff and bond counsel will request the DASNY board adopt documents for the first issuance at either the February or March meeting, and then return to the DASNY board to adopt documents for the second issuance at a subsequent meeting sometime later in 2024. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Okay. Could we have a motion to approve? I should ask, any questions? Nope. Could we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion. Is that Joan?
It's Joan.
Joan, thank you. Sorry, you guys are small on the screen, or my eyes are weak, so apologies. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing a hand flying up on the screen, is that in opposition?
No.
Okay. Just keeping us on our toes here. Any abstentions?
Clarity of the screen.
I think that's it. Okay, motion carries. Next, we'll turn it over to Charlie to give the VP's report.
Thank you, Chair Gomez. On 12/15, we continued our employee engagement activities. So we have a whole suite of things we're doing as the board is aware, and we discussed this semi-annual meeting. We held it on 12/15. About 200 staff from around the state attended. It was a great opportunity for the managing directors to present the successes from the prior year, which includes, for Kim's group, thousands and thousands of transactions. Steve's group, hundreds of new construction projects, billions in new financing. So we went through all that with staff and then talked about what we're going to try to achieve next year, including expansion of services. We have advanced a proposal to, again, allow us access to municipalities. This time, we've added some elements to that would allow us to help them with the Environmental Bond Act and the various federal funds, sources of funds. What we find is that there are a lot of municipalities out there, especially the smaller towns, that might have a supervisor and a part-time clerk. They don't really have the capability or the wherewithal to access these funds. We want to provide that opportunity, and we'll see how that goes with the legislature this year, and hopefully it's included in the budget proposal. So that is good news. We went over with everybody. Yesterday, I attended the governor's State of the State message. There is a piece in there for DASNY, once again, recognizing our strength in the grants area. She is advancing the New York Swims program, which is a program focused on providing swimming opportunities in areas around the state. There will be 3 separate grant programs of that. They will ask DASNY to administer on and working with the Office of Parks and Historic Preservation. So they're the client in this, and we would manage grants if the legislature sees fit to negotiate and enact that in the budget. So that's a real positive.
That's the big plus pool that was.
Plus pools
in
is
the
one
paper.
element of it. So there will be an innovation fund, $60 million innovation fund that would include things like plus pools, which are floating pools that filter the body of water for swimming purposes. There will be a municipal grant program for their swim facilities and a different sort of other innovative swimming approaches, portable pools, hotspot pools for cooling and things in the summertime. So it's a pretty, they also have elements for lifeguards, as Jerry and I were talking about earlier, so lifeguards and other elements, drowning prevention that they're gonna do. So that'll be it's a large piece of the state message, and DASNY will be involved when that goes forward. So also attached for you are the grants report, media outreach, and then on the PLA. Turn that over to Nadine. We have a project labor agreement that Steve's very familiar with in Central New York for the Psych Center. And we're going to rebid that because we're unable to get bidders for it. So Nadine.
Correct. So the board previously approved for the Central New York Psychiatric Center conducting that project with having a PLA. It's a significant project. It's about, it's 120 million. Because of the size and the location of where the project was taking place, the project was separated into 3 phases. With respect to the first phase, we were able to succeed and move forward and get 2 bids for the first phase, which was 40 million. This phase is 36 million. We were not successful. We bid it out twice and we're not successful in getting any contractors in moving forward with the project under a PLA. There's been communications with local contractors, and they indicated that the size of the project was too significant for them for the purposes of getting insurance surety bonds. So bonding. So at this point, we're recommending that we move forward with the second phase of the project without a PLA. When we get to the third phase, we will reassess whether a PLA would be feasible to move at that point in time.
Wickslow, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. And that the primes, the local contractors did indicate that they would, if it were separately bid, that they would be more likely able to handle the case and handle the project.
Capacity just doesn't.
Yes, exactly.
Insurance.
Yeah, it's the same.
And we did make sure that we spoke to the building and trades council to make sure that
They understand the.
even before we were encountering issues, we reached out to them to see if they could assist. And there wasn't anything that could be done. So now we're where we are, bid twice, no responses. So we've made an effort to get the project moving forward with a PLA, and at this point, we can't move forward.
And there's no way to tranche this differently
Break it down
it's three phases, right?
Yes.
To break it down further, the phase 2, I guess.
From a sequencing perspective, it's an occupied facility, very complicated. So we worked with OMH on how to sequence the work. This made the most sense.
That's probably also driving contractors' interest or lack thereof.
In place.
Yeah.
It's a difficult project to consider occupied forensic psychiatric centers. Difficult at best.
Good luck.
I guess just to be explicit, the issue is capacity, not any particular problems with areas of the PLA.
Correct.
The PLA as negotiated is not the issue. The issue is there's a lot of work in Central New York. And contractors are being very picky as to what they bid. And this is a difficult project. We would rather go PLA, but the interest isn't there.
An occupied project, which look, really drives some costs.
And that type of facility. Patient and definition.
Great. Questions from anybody not here in the office, in other offices? We have no motion on this, which is just for information at this
Correct.
point. Okay.
Thank you for bringing it.
Yeah, thank you. It's be an interesting one to watch. Anything else on your end, Charles? No, okay. So then next we will move to Portia and the public finance and portfolio monitoring report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief market update today. Total of 2023 municipal bond volume came in at approximately 380 billion. Was approximately 11 billion or 2.8% less than what we saw in the previous year. This week's supply is expected to be in line with weekly averages at about 8.8 billion. Taxes and bond yields are mostly flat on Tuesday, with 10-year AAA MMD remaining at 2.28%. And 30-year remaining at 3.45%. US government bond yields were slightly higher, with the 10-year treasury yield increasing by 1 basis point to 4.02%, and the 30-year treasury yield increasing by 1 basis point to 4.18%. Municipal bond funds reported outflows for the week ending December 27th after prior week inflows. Just to level set a little bit, since the December 6th board meeting, the 1-year MMD rate decreased by 13 basis points, the 10-year decreased by 29 basis points, and the 30-year decreased by 28 basis points. During that same time period, the 10-year treasury yield decreased by 16 basis points, and the 30-year decreased by 12 basis points. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any questions for Portia?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
You see more interest, Portia? I seem to be busy, but I would think.
Yeah,
Great stuff, so
we have been fielding more inquiries.
thanks.
Absolutely.
And do you see interest rates stabilizing a bit for now, or do you see them continue at some point going down? Because this period, they did not.
Right.
Right.
So
Do
there
you
was.
see them
Mhm.
in the future going down? The 30-year was down, is that right?
So, as you know, the Fed paused at its meeting in December. So I think, that was certainly well received by the market. I'll tell you that, the market, right, is anticipating that rates are going to decrease this year. I think the expectation is maybe three individual meetings and decreases in 2024. But, I think all of that, remains to be seen depending on how the economy is performing. But that's, that's what we're hearing thus far from economists in terms of the expectation. So I think you've asked this question last month, Beryl, is that translating? We are seeing and hearing a little bit more from borrowers. And Lisa, you had made the comment that, sort of the projects are there and people are sort of waiting and looking at rates. So hopefully that is the case. That appears to be the case. And,
Are you
fingers
seeing
crossed.
any dichotomy between fixed and floating, or mostly floating, mostly combination? Are you seeing any particular trend?
Honestly, Beryl, we haven't done floating in a long
Right,
time.
right.
So I'll be honest, I don't really follow it that carefully, but I can certainly take a look and come back to you on that.
I'm just curious because as rates decline, theoretically, that should be at least looked at by
Agreed.
our clients, because, it's not our job, but the clients will at least be looking at it. I was just curious.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And
Part of it's
also,
the hedge though, right? Like, I don't know that banks are very excited to do unhedged anything right now.
Well,
So the
yeah.
cost of a hedge
Yep.
on the size of these
Yeah.
transactions, probably negates half the benefit of floating rate versus fixed.
Right, well, they kind of like when they lock in, they do the back end. If you fix a rate, they do things along the back end to assure that
Yeah,
they're
do a
made
swap
whole
or a
and make a profit. So, but yeah, you're right.
Of the transactions that are currently in the pipeline, do we expect we will be in the market February-ish? I don't
yes,
think we're.
so there are a couple of transactions where we expect will be in the market, I would say at the end of February. Yep.
Which might be just in time for like a Fed meeting, right?
They'd say in March, that's when the
Right.
first, the more
That's what I would do. I would wait
optimistic,
for March.
more optimistic people think that March there'll be a cut, but
Right.
Maybe later.
yeah, I mean,
And it's an election year, so there's that.
well, then we're likely to have a cut.
If anybody has that crystal ball, let me take a look.
Yeah,
at
all
it.
right. I'll just place a few.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Anything else for you?
That's it. Thank you.
Okey doke. Next, Kim will give us an update on what the finance team is doing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item behind tab 11 of your materials is the standing monthly financial report. Personal expenses continue to be under projection, primarily due to retirements and slower than expected recruitments. Non-personnel expenses are also slightly under projection by approximately $600,000, primarily related to lower expense for computer services and equipment, utilities, and corporate insurance. The next item included in your materials is the proposed 2024-25 operating budget and financial plan, which was distributed to the members on December 29th. I'll now turn things over to Jeff Arnold, our Director of Budget and Operations, and he's going to walk you through the highlights of the proposed plan. Jeff?
Thanks, Kim. Good morning, everybody. As outlined in your materials, DASNY has prepared the proposed 2024-25 operating budget, which was posted to our website and distributed to the board on December 29th, within 90 days of the start of the fiscal year, as required under the Public Authorities Reform Act of 2009. The proposed budget was also submitted to the authority's budget office on December 29th as well. The overall 24-25 proposed operating budget, including pass-throughs, is down 11.9% from the adopted 23-24 budget. The 24-25 proposed internal operating budget is up 3.4% from the adopted 23-24 internal operating budget. The 24-25 salary budget decreased slightly from the adopted 23-24 budget, even though we are budgeting for contractually obligated cost of living increases and step advances. The 23-24 salary budget included funding for additional hiring that wasn't realized, and the 24-25 salary budget was developed based on those projected expenses for 23-24. As Kim mentioned in her general report, we are well under budget for 23-24 in salaries. The proposed salary budget for 24-25 will fund 490 FTEs, which is consistent with the 23-24 budget. And just for comparison's sake, as of today, we are at 471 FTEs. Our benefits budget is increasing in 24-25 with expected increases in retirement contributions as a result of increased rates, as well as our payroll expense going up, and increase to health insurance. I'll just say as an aside, this is my 22nd operating budget. I've yet to see the health insurance budget go down from year to year. The M&O budget is also expected to increase slightly over the 23-24 adopted budget, with increases in computer services for several new technology initiatives and professional services for several new consultant engagements. That increase is partially offset by projected decreases in utility costs. I will say I'm quite biased to our facilities team here in Albany as I supervise them. They do a great job of implementing energy savings initiatives. Proposed 24-25 pass-through expenses decreased by $19.2 million compared to the adopted 23-24 budget, primarily due to our post-employment benefit accounting entry, which I mentioned last month during the mid-year financial plan update. Pass-through insurance expenses for property and general liability insurance are expected to increase in 24-25. The proposed surplus for 24-25 is $2.5 million, down just slightly from the projected surplus for the current year of $2.6 million. Proposed budget for 24-25 also shows that our projected allocation of costs between public clients, where we assume revenue to match expenses, and private clients, where we have fixed fees, continues to be 95% public and 5% private. We've seen a significant change in that over the last, I'd say, 10 years or so, and it's been fairly consistent around 94-95% public for the last few years. DASNY is not planning to propose any changes to its private client fee structure and is projecting 12 private client financings for 24-25 and associated revenue consistent with current year projections. Of course, looking at the agenda today, I'm optimistic that maybe we will be above that 12 private client financings for next year. Next year's private client bond administration fees are also expected to remain consistent with current year projections. The details behind all that are available on page 7 and 8 of the budget package. I'll save you from reading through everything, but we always include our top 10 highest admin fee payers and projections going forward. Construction disbursements, which represent project costs, are expected to increase slightly in the current year compared to last year's actual results, while the number of projects is expected to decrease slightly, but continues to remain at a high level against historical actuals. Many of the other items included in the budget package are provided just to meet requirements of the Public Authorities Reform Act of 2009. And as I think I mentioned last month, we're not asking the board to take any action on the budget at this time. We do anticipate coming back in March and asking the board to adopt the budget. Certainly the February meeting will be available if anyone has any additional questions. Happy to take any questions anyone has today.
Any questions? Kim, do you want to touch on your implementation? I know it's a big project that's all consuming and I know everybody's working hard at it.
Yes, just a quick update on where we are in the project. Staff are engaged in the project. It's moving along. We anticipate wrapping up the analysis phase workshops this week. The purpose of this phase was to create the detailed list of business requirements, including a fit gap analysis to determine where we may need to make some decisions on whether or not we do customizations or not. The next step after the analysis phase is for HSO to present the solution blueprint document to the steering committee, which this document outlines the initial design of the system along with any gaps identified during the analysis phase. The committee will have an opportunity to make steering committee, which is an internal DASNY steering committee, will have the opportunity to make decisions regarding process design, customizations, any changes to working methods, and final definition of the project scope. HSO is tentatively scheduled to come out the week of January 22nd to present that solution development document. Once we've signed off on that blueprint document, we'll move into the design and build stage with the system, which will be configured per the blueprint document. At this time, we remain on schedule and on budget. We will see once we get through the solution blueprint document, determine whether or not there's any customizations that we agree to or not. Another portion of the project, which we kind of have been working on in tandem with this implementation, is trying to determine what we're going to do with the data associated with the old system. And as with any new system implementations, we have to make decisions relative to how much historical data we plan to migrate to the new system. Best practices suggest 2 to 3 years of financial balances along with open transactions yet to be completed. However, the remaining data may need to be called upon from time to time for reporting purposes for our clients and internal purposes. We contemplated this in connection with this project, and we estimated the cost as part of the project to create a central repository database that will hold all the legacy data and will be called upon as needed for reporting purposes. We completed a discovery phase with HSO to determine the best path forward and the costs associated with building this data repository. And we will be amending the existing contract to include the work required to build this data repository. The cost was originally included in the estimate with the funding budget. However, we do anticipate that we may exceed the allotted amount and will seek authorization as needed at the appropriate time if we do exceed the funding budget. IS will be working closely with HSO, our implementation partner, to build this cloud-based infrastructure for our data repository. There's no action required for the board at this time from a procurement perspective, but I just wanted to give you an update that we have amended the initial contract that was approved previously.
And this is all in conjunction with their day jobs, so.
Yes.
It's a lot of work for
Yes,
everybody.
it is. And staff have been great. They've adjusted their schedules accordingly. People are in and out of meetings as they can sit in those meetings. We don't have a lot of staff. As you can see, we do have issues with recruitment from a recruiting perspective, but staff has done a great job of prioritizing this project, but also doing their day job as well. So they've been great. We've had cooperation from many areas of the organization to try to make sure that we build this next in class system that will meet our needs for the next 20 plus years, hopefully 10, 15 maybe.
Kudos. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Kim?
That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Steve, up to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess before I start, our IS staff, they are implementing
a lot.
A new project management system, a new financial management system. I mean, they're touching every system, so really.
Seems to be the time.
A shout out to them because they are stressed to the max, doing a great job. As far as the construction division, over the last period, we added 9 new projects totaling approximately $100 million. 1 for New York City courts, 6 for CUNY, and 2 for OMH. We completed 3 projects, 2 for CUNY and 1 for OMH at the Hutchings Psychiatric Center. Expenditures period over period from November 2022, we're at 402 million. November 2023, 500 million. That's a delta of about $100 million. The cover project was the Lasting Hall, a gut renovation project down at SUNY New Paltz, 42 million. We just received occupancy in October of 2023 in time for this spring semester. Architecture Plus was our design consultant, and Consigli was our construction manager at risk. As far as SUNY goes, our project up at FIT continues to chug along. We are targeting May now of this year for our substantial completion date. That moved out another month. We're desperate for that date, given we're now shooting for the fall of 2024 occupancy for the 10-story, $200 million project. We did get good news out at SUNY Alfred. The Mackenzie Hall Phase 3 C project received its TAO last week on January 5th. The students will be moving in this coming weekend. So cutting it quite close there. UAlbany Colonial Quad, still on track for a May 2024 substantial completion date. That is the gut renovation of 2 low-rise residence halls, as well as the addition of a fitness center. With regard to CUNY, our next coordination meeting is on January 24th. Our next meeting with our peers in the facilities group is January 25th. We have good news out of Lehman College. We received our TCO from New York City just this past week, January 8th, a couple days ago, allowing for occupancy of the new school and nursing building for the spring semester. And we continue to work with facility staff at CUNY and continue to work with our executive staff on improvements associated with project delivery. The DOH Life Science Center project, the new lab, we did get approval from the AG's office on our contract. It is now with OSC for contract approval. We've been fielding questions from them. We're hoping that by the end of January, we will have their approval and we can advance the project.
Who's reviewing it now?
OSC's, Officer of State Control. They typically don't on the contract. Typically don't have to seek their approval, but this project is about the there's a high level of activity for our other customer agencies, including OMH, OPW, OASIS, and HHAP. On the recruitment front, no rest for the weary. HR department's doing a good job, but we still have over 30 open recruitments underway. We do have a couple of PLAs that will come to the board next month, one for New York City and one for Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center. In New York City is the blanket PLA. We finished negotiations and they received approval recently, so that'll come to the board next month. As far as the project management system implementation, we now have about 1,100 projects in the system. We're still working to migrate projects from our old contract manager system into PM Web. That will continue to happen over the course of the next 2 quarters. And as far as updating our upcoming presentations and engagements, the American Consulting Engineers Council will do DASNY will do a presentation on January 28th for them. The SUNY PPAA, we will do a presentation on February 6th. Engineers Week is coming up between the 15th and 16th of February. And lastly, we will be at the SUNY Residence Life Hall and Housing Administration Conference on February 27th. That concludes my report.
Keep him busy. Any questions for Steve? Okay. Then may we have a motion to go into an executive session to discuss the financial credit history of a particular corporation, matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and proposed or pending current litigation, certain staff have been asked to stay and certain staff can go since we have no other business beyond this, so. All right. All right, thank you. In a housekeeping note, I understand that the recording may not have captured our motion and vote to go into executive session. The motion was made by me and seconded by Robert. No one was opposed. We went into an executive session. We are now returning from executive session where no decisions were made other than to return to the main room. Yes, got it all? Okay, we'll get this right eventually. Okay, so that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Robert and Jerry, great, thank you. We are all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned.
Thank you.